Okay.
Hey, hello. I see some friends popping up.
Hi, this is Roxy.
Hello.
Hey guys.
Hi, this is Ryan.
Hey, and everybody can just kind of look and see who's there. We're going to give it probably minutes before we get started, and then Beverly will mute all of us so that we don't accidentally interrupt.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome.
Sarah, this is Kay Barnett. I'm joining just by phone.
Okay, awesome. Glad you can make it.
Thank you.
Hey guys.
I have to say, it's funny for me to see Michelle McGinnis from the Alliance because I voted her the person I've Zoomed the most with.
That's terrific.
Best Zoom friends.
Okay, this is Ronnie Kimberly, but I don't see that I'm on the screen.
If you go to the bottom left, you
Mhm.
can start your video,
Okay,
and that may work.
there. Okay,
There we go.
yeah.
Everybody's learning new technologies with our meetings. It's so much fun. Okay, we have 30 participants so far.
Awesome.
Getting there. Lots of people coming in.
Yeah, and just for everybody to know, I think at last check on the registration, we were at 59. And that's for a variety of sessions. So some people, you know, today didn't work for them, but they signed up for some overtime. So I'm guessing 30 to 40 for today is probably what we'll have.
So how's things going in wrestling? Let's get ready.
Okay. Looks like our joining has slowed down just a little bit.
Okay. I had one person with a little challenge, but they said they're in now, so that's good.
Okay, good. There we go.
You might want to go on and mute yourselves in case we hear some secret that you don't want us to hear.
So we're at 33.
Awesome.
34.
Yay.
Where you handled that bear today? Where are you?
I hear a puppy.
Oh, the working from home is evident there.
It's so great.
So Beverly, how we looking now?
We have
You're
35
later too, you
total.
know?
Yeah. 35.
Okay. Well, Neely, I think we're probably a great place to go on and kick it off.
Go ahead. Yep. All right. Well, for those of y'all that don't know me, I am Neely Hale. I'm president of the Junior League of Lake Charles. And welcome to our virtual fundraising seminar. Part of our mission is to promote volunteerism and develop the potential of women. And one of my favorite things about the league is that we offer training opportunities to our volunteers, which not only benefits our organization, but the intent is that the things that they learn from us and within our organization spill out into the community with the other organizations they are involved with. So we thought this was a perfect opportunity for us to offer to other nonprofits during this time. We are pleased to partner with Sarah Judson, one of our sustainers, who is with the Community Foundation of Southwest Louisiana. And she is going to tell y'all a little bit about herself and her organization.
Good. Thank you, Neely. Yes, as a sustainer in the league, I'm especially pleased to be able to have our organization, the Community Foundation, partner with the league to be able to support all the nonprofits in the region. And one of those things, for the Community Foundation, we like to say we're about connecting people who care with causes that matter. And one of the ways we were able to do that is through an emergency relief grant, thanks to many donors from companies as well as people. And many of you represent the 32 organizations that received a $2,500 grant to help you re-engage in your services over the last month or so. And we've gotten lots of positive feedback with that. But when we asked you all what was your number one need over the next few months, reminder to mute if you're not already, please. The number one need that you all identified was to be able to enhance your skills in reaching out to your donors and keeping your organization solvent during the pandemic and in the changing times of 2020. And so that's how we ended up partnering with the league. They really wanted a way to help nonprofits right now too. And so that's how we decided to do this. And we're bringing a nationally recognized leadership and fundraising consultant to our region virtually. And it's so nice that we're all able to do it from our home or our desk. And Beverly, my husband Mark and I have had the chance to get to know her some. Mark and I served on the foundation board for the Louisiana School for Math, Science, and the Arts. And Beverly helped them with strategic planning and is now assisting their organization also with building a real foundation there. And so we were pleased to get to work with her, and now I'm excited to get to have her share her expertise with all of us in the region. One of her claims to fame, just to help set the stage here, and that even as an Ole Miss alum, I'm happy to share this part, that she was on the staff at the LSU Foundation, and she was the director of the Forever LSU campaign. And I'm sure many of you were a part of that, or some of you probably have the bumper stickers on your car to prove it. With her leadership, they raised $798 million in the Forever LSU campaign, and the goal was $750 million. So I think you can see from that she is a true rock star at what she does, and it's great for us that part of what she does is share the expertise to help us grow our abilities to connect those people who care about something and connect them with our organizations and our missions. So Beverly, we're so pleased to have you virtually in our area, and I will turn it over to you.
That is so terrific. Thank you, both Neely and Sarah. It's such a pleasure to be with you. And I'm looking at all the people that are being admitted, and I have to give a big shout out to my dear friend Kelly Pepper, who is new to your area, who was part of the Forever LSU campaign. And she was a tremendous part of that effort. There were over 150 people involved in that. I just got to wear the director hat, and literally the hat is behind me. But I'm grateful for the opportunity to visit with you all this evening. I am going to mute everyone, but we're going to ask you if you would please use your you would use the chat room for questions. So Sarah is going to watch the room, if you will, the chat room. And at the end of this, if I haven't answered a question throughout the presentation, And then we're going to make sure that we get your question answered. I'm hoping all of you can see the screen that I am sharing, which is a slide presentation, and part of the record will include the slide presentation. So this will be available to all of you. So just a little bit about, Sarah told you that a brief highlight, but a little bit about Carter and who I am. Carter Global is a global fundraising firm, and we truly work on the world stage. Bob Carter is our founder, and incidentally, since many of you are AFP members, he was the recipient of the Lifetime AFP Award this year, so we're super proud of him. I've had the opportunity to work with many of the team members at Carter in a different iteration. I worked for Pursuant Ketchum after I was at LSU. And that is also a fundraising firm, and followed Bob later over to Carter. In addition, I was the president of the foundation at Women's Hospital. So I've got consulting experience, higher ed experience, performing arts experience, and I've raised money in a variety of different verticals. Literally, my clients right this second are coast to coast. So I go from Virginia all the way to Los Angeles on a daily basis. So it's really nice to be able to work virtually, even if you will, in my home state. So as we move forward, let me just tell you a little bit about Carter. We're philanthropy specialists. There are 31 consultants in our firm, and we do everything from the World Health Organization Foundation, which we're super proud of, and World Vision, all the way down to very small nonprofits with, in some cases, only a development officer. If a development officer, and sometimes just an executive director who's serving and wearing all of the hats. Our service offerings are in fundraising, organizational planning, governance. I happen to be very, very strong in the capital campaign management space and major and mega gift programs. But over the course of the next 5 weeks, we're going to talk about a whole lot of things. So there's nothing on here I haven't at least touched, but our team, that's one of the things that we love about Carter, is that our collective wisdom of over 500 years brings our client services. And we're like many other firms in some ways, but in other ways that we're not. We're a comprehensive fundraising strategy firm, and we specialize in specific focus areas, and our team members will pull into particular offerings, if you will, with our clients based on needs. So we are not a one-size-fit-all firm, and we like it that way. So let's talk about current trends in philanthropy. Some of you may have heard me speak on either a LANO call or on an AFP call not too long ago, specific to Louisiana. So some of that is in here, but I really wanted to start with the basics. I do that. I am both an academic and a practitioner in the space. So I have a PhD and teach as an adjunct faculty member in 3 different organizations of higher education, specifically in philanthropic leadership. So I'm kind of a leadership and academic junkie, and research on one side and practitioner on the other. And I say that because in research, particularly in higher education, we like to cite things and look at data and research and that sort of thing. So I would offer that in some cases I'm taking the best information I could find, but because I do I do take plagiarism seriously, I have cited some of the places that I have found those. So as we go, I thought we would start tonight with really walking through what is philanthropy specifically, and what are those trends looking like in the world that we're living, and we'll round that out with some of the very, very specific current things that are happening in light of COVID COVID-19. So in the world of philanthropy, many of you know Giving USA, the Lilly School of Philanthropy is really the big dog in research, if you will, across the United States. And they basically take all of our 990s and nonprofits, and they also take all of your tax returns, and they aggregate the information, and they produce a report called Giving USA. And very grateful that several of our team members are part of the Lilly School, and we got a preview. So I'm going to give you some information that is not necessarily available to the general public. But these numbers just came out. So for the year annual report, excuse me, that's should say for the year 2019. So here's the great news about last year. So it's a banner year in philanthropy in 2019. Over 449 billion with a B dollars was given away in 2019. And I show you this slide because I think it's important, and you'll notice the red circles here. Over $309 billion was given by individuals, $75 billion with a B, 17% was given to foundations, and 10% was given through wills and bequests. 5% of the money given away in 2019 was given by corporations. Now, this trend has been holding steady, very steady for quite some time. So if you have board members that are on the call tonight, or those of you who serve on boards, first, thank you for your service. We're so grateful for your leadership and service to our communities. But frequently in board meetings, we hear board members come and say, we need to be raising more money from corporations. And we always pop this slide up because it dispels some myths. And this holds true even in Louisiana. And as generous and prolific as our industry is, particularly in the region where you are, 5% of giving is from corporations. The rest is driven by individuals. So individuals gave 309, foundations. So over at the Southwest Community Foundation, Sarah will tell you that donor advised funds are driven by donors and individuals. So although 17% is sitting in foundations, generally those are family foundations and or trustees that are acting at the behest of individual. And then of course, wills and trusts are individuals. So this is a really important slide, and we're going to refer to it quite a bit. Now, moving along a little bit, where did that money go? Well, of the $449 billion, 29% of that money went to religion, and 14% went to education. Now, this slide is important, but what is most notable in 2019 is that religion for the second or third year in a row has gone down. So giving to religious organizations has gone down, and it is going across these other areas. And I am personally of the opinion, based on years of experience and research, that philanthropy is actually taught. And the first place most of us learn how to be generous is in a very deliberate way is through churches or synagogues or mosques or any of the 5 big religions that we practice. And we see that that is going down. And what we know is that trend is following, that people are not going into organized churches and synagogues and mosques as much as they used to in our country. So that's an interesting thing for us. So that's maybe good news for the rest of folks over here, but it's not necessarily great news because we're having to teach philanthropy in different ways. So we're learning how to be generous in different ways. And in many cases, that falls on the great organizations that are on this phone. So our donor base in some cases are really, really savvy, but in other cases, not as much. Now, higher education and K through 12 education is reflected in the education spot, the human services, of course. Now, most importantly, here is that Gifts to Grant Making Foundation. So you see that $53 million, $53 billion was given to foundations. Now I'm going to refer to this much later today, but what that means is that money has been donated into either a donor advised fund or a family foundation or something like the community foundation, and it's sitting in accounts out there. So there's $53 billion sitting just from last year in those accounts. And what we know is that within the next 5 years, that will be redistributed into all of these other areas. So an important trend to watch, although the gifts and grant making to foundations is really high, that money gets redistributed. So it's a little bit of a misnomer here. Now this is giving over time. So since 1979, what does giving look like in the United States? And this is adjusted based on dollars now. And dollars in a recession. Well, I don't think it's any secret right this second. We're in very uncertain times as far as the economy. And that great big red arrow is right there because I will tell you, and I do appreciate the shout out to my alma mater at LSU and the Forever LSU campaign, but that money that we raised at LSU happened to be between 2006 and 2010. Now, y'all will remember what happened in 2008. It was the worst economic downturn in the last 50 years history. In addition, in South Louisiana, we were coming off 4 major hurricanes. Hurricanes Gustav, Ike, Katrina, and Rita. In addition to that, there was this little thing called the BP oil spill. So disaster on top of disaster on top of disaster. And I show you that because still over $300 billion was given away in the United States. Now here's a secret that you may not know. The state of Louisiana is the most philanthropic state in the United States. What? Well, we still go to church and to synagogues, and we lift up our neighbors in unique ways, and particularly in South Louisiana, I think, because we are so homogeneous. We don't like to leave home. We like our crawfish. We like to be outdoors and hunt and fish and do all of those things. So people in general stay here, but we're also very much an uplifting community to each other. And these trends hold true for Louisiana as well. Now, even in uncertain times, all we can do is go back and look at history. I would suspect that even though we're in difficult times, we can look at the dips here and suggest that although giving will look and feel a little bit different for individual people, I would argue that giving is not going to stop just because we're in COVID-19 and or there's an economic downturn. It may look a little bit different, but I don't believe that these numbers will change terribly. So what are some of the factors that influence giving? These are the things that you all know for sure. Legacy, people wanting to engage next generations or share their values or invest in organizations. Taxes are a reason. In fact, the tax code changes in the last couple of years have encouraged people to give a lot in that foundation space of late, but that is the least of these. And then altruism, which is the most of them, because it's the right thing to do, because it makes us feel good, because we want to make a difference, and particularly in the state of Louisiana, because we really want to uplift our neighbor and do the right thing. So that's joie de vivre. So how do donors make decisions about where they give? Well, at Carter, we work a lot with ultra high net worth families, and we work with board members. And this is a slide off another presentation, but when we get in front of board members and we get in front of families that we're working with, very frequently we will show them this slide and ask them specifically, what do you care about? how are you spending your time? How are you spending your time with the organization that you're here? What issues and populations do you want to serve? What are your personal top 3 philanthropic priorities? What are your organizational? And when I say organizational, it's not just the person, but it's the organization perhaps that they're an executive in or they own. And then personally, what are your values, your beliefs, your missions, your philosophy? What are your personal and organizational top 3? And when we ask people to force themselves into their top 1, 2, and 3 priorities of how they want to spend their time, their talent, their reputation, their influence, they really very frequently will double down, if you will, with the organizations that have engaged them and that they're most passionate about. So that holds true when we look at what are the primary motivators for meaningful philanthropy. I'm going to pause just a moment because I see a few people waiting and I'm having a little trouble. There we go. Making sure there. Now we've got them admitted. Sorry about that. But most people give because they have a deeply held yearning to make a difference. And that if you remember Maslow's hierarchy when you were in sociology class in college, that is held true across the board for years and years. There's an argument right now, if you read the Chronicle of Philanthropy, that we're going much more as a country from a culture of charity to a culture of philanthropy. So it's not just I want to make an individual difference, it's I want to make a global difference, and I want to be extraordinarily thoughtful and frankly get a return on the impact of giving where we are. So human need to be engaged with people, personal stories of life-changing experiences. Now there's an asterisk next to this. Religion, education, public policy, things like that don't change very often. When we talk about life-changing experiences, we're generally talking in the healthcare space or in the disaster space. So for example, my top 3 philanthropic priorities may be my church, my alma mater, and then of course wherever my kids are doing whatever it is that they're doing. So we hear that a lot until perhaps you're diagnosed with cancer or your house floods in 2017 and you rethink, it helps you refocus. But mostly it's because people really want to make a difference. Now, how does that influence nonprofit structures? So I know in some cases, some of you know this, but in other cases, you might not have thought of it quite in these terms. But one of the biggest questions that we get from nonprofit organizations is, how should we set up our teams and what do those structures look like? Well, not everyone grows up to be a major gift officer, and I would throw out the window any context that people start in a nonprofit organization, particularly in fundraising, and it is a rise to the top. That is not the case. What it is there are people that are extraordinarily gifted at annual funds and annual fund giving. There are people extraordinarily gifted at major gifts. There are people extraordinarily gifted at plans giving. And then there are folks that lead organizations. And just because somebody is a great major gift officer doesn't mean that they're going to make a great executive leader. Just because somebody is a great annual fund person doesn't mean that they're going to be a terrific major gift officer. So what we need to understand is that we have to be extraordinarily strategic in every piece of the donor pyramid. And what you're seeing is how everyone is serving a donor in particular measures of what we would call the donor pyramid. And I'm going to go deep into what this means, but really strategy from a donor perspective based on donor values and interest and engagement needs to be driven at every single one of these levels. So what does that really mean? I would take our donor pyramid and I like to shake things up and turn them upside down. So I did that, in fact. So if we redefine the donor pyramid, what does that look like? And I'm going to go back to the last slide, where we've got annual fund officers, major gift officers, planned giving officers, and leadership. So if this is your staffing structure, well, this is the vehicles and the ways in which you engage donors to make a difference. And what we believe at Carter is that donor relationships should be driven at every single level of the donor pyramid by specialists in that space. Now, I know that in some shops, there are 3 people doing all of the work and all of the things. So you have to have a strategy for each of these areas, not just for the engagement. But if you're at a very big, large organization, like a institution of higher education or a hospital, and you have the ability to have specialists, then you would do that. But what we would like to do is call this pyramid now a donor funnel. And are the donor relationships being driven at every level by specialists? And are you looking at each of these areas, social media, face-to-face, direct response, videos, websites, emails, events, at the bottom level pyramid and top of your funnel as an engagement opportunity to strategically engage people to grow in their giving and make larger gifts? Who do we need to have face-to-face visits with? Who should we have mid-tier events or legacy societies with? Who should we put our president in front of? So donor relationships have to be driven at every level by specialists. We also believe that data-driven intelligence enables organizations to identify qualified prospects and how to predict their receptivity to making larger gifts. When we go into an organization that is, for example, planning for a capital campaign, we frequently ask people not just for what is the cumulative giving that somebody has made, but how many gifts have they made to the organization? What is the number of gifts that they have made? And sometimes people will ask me, if a donor has given us $1,000 one time, is it more valuable than a donor who's given us $100 10 times? And the answer is yes. But how are you going to strategically engage them? Well, prospect intelligence and donor intelligence helps you do that. What is the behavior? So I would suggest that if we're going to be really strategic and if we're going to be successful in nonprofit organizations moving forward, it's not just about the money, it's about the number of touches and engagements. How many times is somebody raising their hand with you by showing up to an event, by clicking on something on social media, by responding to an email, going to an event, having a face-to-face meeting? Are we also tracking the behavior? And that's the big takeaway from these 3 slides. It's not just about the money, but are we tracking donor behavior in each of these levels? So donor intelligence can be used to identify potential major donors. So you may know of somebody out there that is you believe has capacity. They've maybe given you $100 over time. That 10 times that we talked about. And they're not necessarily making major gifts to you, but you see them giving to other organizations. Well, are you tracking prospect intelligence to see how are they engaging with you? Are they just giving you gifts? Which vehicle are they making those gifts through? And who's soliciting those gifts? Are we tracking that information? Are we tracking the donor intelligence that helps us make those gifts at those levels? So most importantly, it has to be ongoing and it has to be two-way communication. We very much worry frequently about getting our message out, but we don't do a particularly great job in nonprofit organizations of watching people raise their hand with an organization and sincerely listening to what a donor wants to do and how they want to engage with us. I frequently say that donors will give to an organization in one of many ways. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's their influence, sometimes it's their reputation, sometimes it's time, and sometimes it's their resources. Well, are we tracking those things in addition to the money? And it needs to be two-way. So when we communicate with people, these things are extraordinarily important. And most organizations can't do all of these, and they're not appropriate for all organizations. But if we're using any of the core messaging in a personalized multi-channel approach, if we're using any of the things on this particular slide, we need to make sure that it is thoughtful and planned and strategic. Are we reaching the people that we think we want to reach? Is it consistent? Are we saying the same things based on our vision, mission, values over and over and again so that we hear it? You know, I ask people very frequently when I'm in person, inevitably somebody's going to have a Nike swoosh on a bit of their clothing, or somebody's going to be drinking a Coca-Cola. Well, Nike doesn't stop advertising, even though 95% of the world recognizes that the swoosh is Nike. Nobody stops drinking Coca-Cola. They don't stop advertising. We still see all those commercials on TV and billboards everywhere for Coca-Cola, even though 95% of the people know, let's have a Coke and a smile. So it has to be strategic, it has to be consistent, and it needs to be integrated and drive cross-channel communication. And it has to work within the strengths of each channel. So what's appropriate, for example, for radio is not appropriate for email, but are the messages consistent? And using the appropriate channel for the appropriate donor at the appropriate time. That's really important. So when we look at that donor pyramid turned upside down again, the most important thing is, are we using the prospect intelligence at each of these levels with specialists that can assist us? You know, not everybody can throw an event and knows where the place cards go. Not everybody can write a direct mail letter. In fact, that's a very unique skill. Not everyone is gifted at social media, but are we consistent in our messaging? Are we using prospect intelligence to drive that messaging? And are we catalyzing contacts to do something different? Are we galvanizing them into motion to raise their hands with us through time, talent, treasure, money, influence, reputation? And is the communication compelling and strategic and consistent? And those things help us drive donors from $100 givers to $1,000 givers to $10,000 givers to, in many cases, legacy donors. And even, you know, we all have heard stories of the teacher who's worked for an organization that has consistently given to that school or that organization over time, and then everybody is shocked and amazed when she leaves her whole estate to the organization. Well, if we're tracking the prospect intelligence and we are really using specialists and asking people, why are you giving? How would you like to be more involved with us than just your money? How can we engage you in a more meaningful way? How can we invite you to participate? Don't we all want to be invited? How can we invite people to participate with us? That in those deepening relationships. And let me be really clear, and something that I think we forget when we look at things and we're talking about data and metrics. We all in the nonprofit world are in a relationship-based business. So we need to incentivize the strategists, the employees at each of these levels into staying with us and making these places and engaging them in ways that are important so that we don't lose the relationship over and over and over with our donors. The same thing is true for our donors. We want to encourage our donors to stay with us in meaningful, engaged ways. So how do you keep an employee? You engage them. How do you keep a donor? You engage them. And that long-term relationship is really what gets you to things like major and mega gifts and legacy gifts. And at the end of the day, you know, it hasn't changed much. When we look at prospect intelligence, if you will, at the end of the day, what we're really talking about is I'm a donor. I'm a potential donor. And as a nonprofit person, as a board member, what do we really need to do to move that donor down that pyramid or up down that funnel or up the pyramid, like we talked about? First, we need to identify what are their top 3 philanthropic interests, and are they interested in us as an organization? And just because somebody's name is on a wall somewhere else, I actually say that when somebody says, oh, we need to talk to John Doe because he gave XYZ organization $1 million and he should be giving to us. I call Mr. Doe in that scenario, Mr. Sims, Mr. somebody else's money. John Doe is giving that other organization $1 million, but why should he give to you? Are you in his top 3 philanthropic priorities, or are you in his bottom 30 philanthropic priorities? Has he ever given to you? So identifying them and qualifying them. So somebody with wealth is not necessarily the only qualification. Somebody that has been engaged with you, somebody that is participating and wants to be involved is part of that qualification. And of course, building a trust relationship, having conversations with those donors. And when I say conversations, I don't mean just one-way communication. I mean two-way strategic communication. And then locating their passion. Remember, donors give because of their values and interests. And how often do we ask them, what are your values and interests? And what prompted you to give? Was it because Kelly asked you? Or was it because you believe deeply in our mission? Was it because somebody invited you to this event and you thought it would be a fun thing to do? Or is it because you really believe in this cause, and how can we engage you to be further involved with us? We match philanthropic passions, we facilitate next steps, and look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is we gain gifts. So look at the very bottom of the slide. It's the most important thing. It's not about the money. It's really about what is meaningful for the donor. And the only way that we know what is meaningful to a donor is to build a trusted relationship and to have engaged conversations and relationship with them over time so that we understand and they're asking us to make larger gifts. We engage them. So, how do we do that? How do we engage people? Well, it starts with a vision. And it really starts with an investment of a strategic plan. What is your mission? What is your vision? What are the measurable objectives to that mission and vision with deadlines? What is your plan to reach those objectives? What are the resources required to fund the plan? We frequently say in the consulting space that you have to win it on paper. You have to win your plan on paper. You have to understand what is the plan, what are the people, what are the processes, what are the resources that you're going to need to achieve those objectives. Well, honestly, that's not much different than the way a donor thinks, particularly a donor who's going to make a major gift with you. They want to understand the return on their investment is how they think of it. We call it a return on their impact. You need to be able to articulate these, and every single person in your organization needs to be able to know what their mission, their vision, their measurable objectives are. And I love when I work with an organization and somebody says, I'm not a fundraiser. That's their job. Every single person affiliated with an organization that's in a nonprofit is a fundraiser. If you're in a hospital, the nurse is a fundraiser. The environmental services person is a fundraiser. The parking attendant is a fundraiser. The doctor is a fundraiser. The fundraiser is a fundraiser. And so is a chief executive officer. And equally as important is so is the board member. So at a minimum, can they talk about what is the mission and the vision? So if you're not engaging your board in these conversations, it's time to start. What else does that look like? Well, it looks like a compelling compelling case. We call that a case for support. I call it the who, what, when, where, why, and how much are you raising money for? so what? So what? You want to raise money. Everybody wants to raise money. You need to be able to answer the so what? Why should I give to you? Well, the case for support is really what is central to our mission that we can't do now, that we could do more with private sector income beyond really just annual fundraising. Annual fundraising is extraordinarily important, and it should have your case for support in that. But when you're thinking in big terms, what do we want to be 10 years from now? Who do we want to serve 10 years from now? And most importantly to the case for support, I believe, is if your organization were to collapse and disappear, what need in the community wouldn't be served? That is your case for support. So what is vision? Well, your vision, your case for support, it establishes the need or threat. If we don't raise this money, this student doesn't go to school. If we don't raise this money, this woman doesn't get a mammogram. And gets breast cancer. What is that need threat for your organization? It has to be inspirational and transformational. It has to be inspired. That's why we call it impact. Vision has to be simply stated with tangible outcomes. And that's why you see so many organizations say, $1,000 can feed these people. And those things, quantifying that kind of information is valuable to an organization. It has to have defined time horizons. It can't just be forever and ever. It needs to be urgent. We need to serve these people at this moment, at this time, because if we don't, this will happen, or this is the threat. It has to have clearly articulated requirements, and it honestly requires sacrifice. It requires, gosh, if we're going to really do this, we have to dig deep. We have to be holistically committed to this particular case, and it doesn't settle for half measures. I would challenge you, if you have the opportunity, to go rewatch Martin Luther King's I Had a Dream speech. And then I'd challenge you to watch John F. Kennedy's speech on they call it the I Have a Moon speech. And go listen to that with these things in your mind. The need and the threat. It's inspirational and transformational. It has tangible outcomes, time horizons. Any fantastic dream starts with this, and you all have fantastic dreams. Most importantly, vision and practice. What is that really? If there were an article written about your organization in 10 years, what would the headline be? I can promise you in 2006, nobody dreamt that LSU could raise $750 million, especially after Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. But we weren't looking at a dollar amount. What we were looking at was the dream of, wouldn't it be amazing if we had a state-of-the-art college of business? Wouldn't it be amazing if all of our first-generation college students were able to come to school regardless of their ability to pay for it? It was inspirational. It had visions. It had tangible outcomes. So for your organization, and while you're sitting at your desk or in your pajamas in your bed while you watch this, think about this statement. If there was an article written about your organization, the one either you work for or that you serve on a board for, what would that headline be if you got to dream the dream for them? And that's really what vision and practice is. This is what it looks like for you numbers people. We're going to touch impact X number of lives through X, through education, which requires this investment, through outreach, which requires this investment, through sustainable financing, through this, with tangible deadlines and outcomes. So vision is really bigger than any campaign. And when I say campaign, I'm not talking about capital campaign. It's bigger than any annual fund campaign, than any event that you're going to do, any major gift effort. It requires everybody. It requires the participation and responsibility for everyone towards the vision, and it is shared equally. The board has to buy into the vision. The leadership of the organization, that's the administrative leadership of the organization, has to take responsibility. The development office has to take responsibility. Anybody that's involved in programs or services or operations and administration has to take responsibility. Every single person within the organization needs to understand what the mission and vision is about. And in a nonprofit organization, it has to be a unified message across the board. So it's not just the fundraising message or the recruitment message or the event message. It's got to be a shared vision across all. And at a very high level, everybody should be able to articulate what did that unified messaging is. What are we raising money for, and what is our so what? Why should we give to you? Now, that is structures, that is development, that is kind of the overall big picture of how boards and organizations really need to think. What does that mean during COVID-19? Well, over the next 4 weeks after this, we're going to be talking about major gifts and annual fundraising, and I'll dive a little deeper as we talk about major gift fundraising, specifics around each of these. But here are some things at a very high level I think all organizations need to be really cognizant of, and how are things changing during COVID-19. Here are some things to watch. Well, this disaster is different. And, you guys in South Louisiana, Southwest Louisiana, are no stranger to disaster. You've been harder hit than just about anyone in the United States. But this particular disaster is not isolated geographically. And I keep telling people that we're in a 90-day hurricane. Well, now that we're on 90 or 100 days of that, we're in a 6-month hurricane. We're not positive when this particular disaster is going to end, and we're not even on the same page as a nation or as a world of are we in a disaster? Are we in an economic disaster? Are we in a pandemic disaster? And oh my gosh, it is hurricane season, isn't it? So it's not isolated geographically, and what's happening in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and Lake Charles, Louisiana, is probably closer than what's happening over in Los Angeles, but they're on lockdown today too. And in previous disasters, we could look as a nation in a particular area, and our response is different. So what that means is people hold on a little bit tighter because we're still uncertain. The winds are still blowing. So disaster is happening simultaneously with economic downturn. Now in South Louisiana, we're no stranger to that. And that's why I started with that slide in 2008. We had economic downturn for major hurricanes, and we had the BP oil spill. So we're actually pretty adept at that. Now here's the good news about living in South Louisiana. We're always in an economic downturn. I hate to actually say it, but when we are in a situation like this, our highs and lows are very different than the highs and lows of, say, New York or Pittsburgh. So, for example, Pittsburgh is very determined by the national markets, and they have extreme highs and extreme lows. Well, in South Louisiana, our highs and lows go up and down a little bit. Our curve, our roller coaster is not as steep, if you will. And right now, that's actually good news. Now, we've been in an oil and gas challenge for 3 or 4 years. And I am very cognizant of the fact that affects your neck of the woods, and you lived through a flood not too long ago in 2017. But given all of that, we know that we're extraordinarily philanthropic. And so the answer really is we don't know. And the best way to predict the future is to look at the past. So it is across the board, and it's very individualized. So this pandemic is affecting us globally, but the economic downturn, people are either really successful right now, or they're on the other end of the spectrum. And the only way we're going to know that is if we have relationship conversations with them, one-to-one individualized conversations with folks. Corporations and funders are doubling down right now for a rainy day, and we're seeing a lot of conversions. So particularly if people are in the event space and they have sponsorships, we're seeing a lot of those sponsorship opportunities convert to just outright gifts, which is wonderful. Funders are being more flexible than ever. They're speedy. They're relaxing their requirements. They're giving operational support. We're seeing our government do that. We're seeing corporations do that, and we're seeing foundations do that. Now, 100 days in, 120 days in, if you will, organizations are starting to group together to help solve some of the challenges and the problems. So we're a little bit farther down the road than we were, say, even 3 months ago. But the foundations are really stepping up to the plate in bigger ways than we've ever seen them before. So those of you that are involved with foundations, including our very generous host this evening, thank you for doing that and for having conversations with your funders about that. Now, we don't know the finish line and the variables change daily, but what can we do? As an organization, not just the normal case for support that we have, but what are we doing specific to COVID-19? We need to clearly articulate the immediate and urgent need of an organization. We've got to craft a case for support that includes both a mix of both emotionally, the case for support that is your normal, everyday, this is what our mission and vision is, but this is what our tweak is for perhaps COVID-19. And we need to hear really compelling stories about what your organizations are doing, or frankly, what you're not able to do because you're shut down. So for example, hospitals are going gangbusters right now because your frontline response, that looks a little bit different if you're sitting in a school, and it looks a whole lot different if you are sitting in a performing arts center. So be very specific in your case for support, but I do remind you to put out the message. If your organization were to go away, who wouldn't be served? And that's a great place to start. So you have to focus even more than before on your mission and vision. What problem or challenge is the organization solving right this second? And how are you responding in positive ways? And what are you doing? And frankly, why should the donor care about this right now? And why will they care in 6 months? And then how are you going to act in 12 months? And absolutely share as many current success stories as you possibly can and proof of impact. One of the things that we are seeing across the globe right now is people are hungry for content. I don't know about you. I am not a TV watcher, but I have watched all of the things on Netflix, all of them. I am out of Netflix. I don't have another thing to watch, and I'm watching content on my computer, and I'm watching content on my phone because we can't go do a lot of things. And because of the shutdown in the world, a lot of things are not being created. So be creative and provide content through social media or through maybe other methods of communication that you hadn't thought before. This is an outstanding way to engage donors. Get a donor to pick up this handy dandy device and give a 10-second reason why your organization is so exciting and what you've done for them, and post it on Facebook. You know what? Right this second, even if they're not big in social media, they're going to share it. They're going to Zoom it. It's a lot of fun. We're changing at a rapid pace. So, hyper-focused COVID-19 case. What is the challenge that created the need for the support? What is the compelling community condition the organization is uniquely positioned to address? What might happen if the organization doesn't realize its vision right this second? And be as specific as you possibly can about the cost estimates. We'll go into this deeper, but your methods of support are a little bit different. We have seen a tremendous number, and last time 3 months ago, I gave a presentation like this online. We had seen about 8 major gifts of $1 million or more. That is up to over 20 major gifts of $1 million or more, because people are in relationship with their major donors and board members, and those donors are stepping up to the plate. But I wouldn't broadly solicit new gifts in major gifts. We're having to get extraordinarily creative about event placement. We've actually changed one of the sessions to be online fundraising and events, and that should be really exciting because it's a new and changing world. And then annual funds should not stop. You should absolutely continue your annual fund. Your delivery of that may need to look a little bit different. But most importantly, you need to be direct, you need to be candid, you need to be transparent, and you need to be vulnerable. We usually don't talk about our weaknesses very well, but if you answer all of the questions at the top of this, that vulnerability is really important with the people that have been deeply engaged with you over time, and they will probably radically surprise you. So renewed vision, and the word new is big in here. One of the things that we see in disasters in time of economic downturn, and this is across businesses and this is across nonprofits, for-profit and nonprofits, is it forces new markets. It forces new methods of delivery, and it forces new partnerships. If you don't know who your community partners are, look at the list on this phone. You are looking at new methods of delivery. I promise you 6 months ago, I would not have done a Zoom call with 100 people on this particular issue, because we would have the opportunity to be in a room together. So we're forcing, wouldn't it be great to have Zoom stock right now? New markets, we've got a whole new market. We've got a whole new way to play, new methods of delivery. Use those new methods of delivery. Get creative. Look at partnerships, even partnerships that you had not even thought about before. And how can you partner with each other to solve a workforce development issue? How can you solve a healthcare issue? How can you solve an economic development issue? How can you work together to really challenge something that is happening in our world? So we know disasters and economic downturn really give us an opportunity. If we really think about the negativity that's going on as a major opportunity, those new markets, delivery systems, and partnerships will emerge. But you also need to go back to that. What is the vision? The vision establishes the need or the threat. It's inspirational, transformational. It's simply stated tangible outcomes, clearly articulated requirements, and requires sacrifice, and doesn't settle for half measures. I invite you right now to be bold. Boldness is required in times of challenge. Be vulnerable, say the hard things, have the hard conversations with your board and with your community top donors, and have those discussions. People are hearing it different because their time is better. And you have to communicate. So first, and people ask me, the phases of disaster, there's response, relief, and recovery. Some of us are in all of these at once. Generally, response happens immediately, and then we move into relief. Right now in South Louisiana, particularly with the governor's mandate and some of the things that are changing with our businesses, we've come from phase 1 not to phase 2 and now to phase 1. It's okay to do stewardship calls and just check in with people. They genuinely care, and you will probably get them on the phone right now. People are absolutely worried about their jobs. They're worried about their employees. They're worried about their stock market. They're worried about people that either themselves or other people that have challenges from a health perspective. Now is a really great time to be the altruistic people that you are, or you wouldn't be in this profession. Call people and check on them and ask how they're doing, and ask them if you can check in with them again, and talk to them when they say, well, how are you? You can say and be vulnerable. This is where we are with our organization. but also share some positive news. Like, here's some really great things that are happening right now. Our team has started really ending calls with, tell us something really great that happened today, or tell us something really great that one of your clients is doing. Well, I would share that. Tell us something really great that COVID-19 pandemic, being confined to a Zoom call, has taught you. What is something that you're adding back to your life? These are conversations that you can have with people, and these are catalytic behavioral conversations that lead to deeper relationship. And in the relationship, it's not about the money. We're in the relationship. Share positive news. And when people ask, has a lot to do, and when people really start aggressively asking, has a lot to do with what your COVID case is. If you're a hospital or a school, you absolutely need to be asking all day, every day. I think many of us are moving into this recovery phase, and we can invite people to participate in the solutions. So if you have a team, for example, that has helped you for years with a particular event, and you're having to reimagine that event, don't do it by yourself. Ask them what they want. Be in relationship with them. Be constant, be consistent, be caring, be candid, and be clear. And all the time, you have to redo this. And I would suggest your strategic plan that you had for the year when you want it on paper and you're setting your budgets and goals, whether you're on a calendaring year system or your budget just started in July. You need to devise a plan, and you really need to review it weekly and monthly and make adjustments as the market starts to change and how it starts to open up. In addition to an economic downturn and a pandemic, we do have major elections happening in November, and that always changes money cycles a little bit, particularly in South Louisiana, because we're a little more political than other places. We actually like to talk about our politics. But I say that, so the next 4 months is going to be really interesting, but it might change some of the end of year things that you do. So you're going to have to assemble your top decision makers in very strategic ways quickly. All your stewardship calls with your donors, your board members need to show empathy, be a calming influence, of course, listen, be ready with your case, and be ready to share, prioritize, and really keep it simple. And I'm hoping over the next 4 weeks, we'll be able to talk more in depth about, what are major gifts and how does that work, and how do we continue planning for those. And the best way to plan for major gifts is through deeper relationships, but specifically, what do we need to do during COVID-19? And we'll do the same thing for annual funds and events. Okay, y'all want to hear some really good news? Let's hear some really good news. So what is different about this particular situation that we have not seen in our country before? Now remember, $449 billion was given away last year. And after 2009, we still gave over $330 billion away. So history repeating itself. Well, here's what didn't happen in 2008 and 2009. We didn't have 120 plus billion dollars. And now that number is probably closer to 130 to 40. We just haven't gotten all those tax returns that were due yesterday back yet. But we know for certain that there's approximately 120 to 150 billion dollars sitting in trust accounts, general advised funds, those foundations that has not been redistributed. So there is an extraordinarily unique opportunity to talk to people who have been giving through community foundations, general advised funds, trust accounts, that sort of thing, to leverage. They've already technically given the money away and gotten their tax credit, but they can absolutely have conversations with with you about that money and how they might want to direct that money. And this is a really, really unique opportunity. So donor advised funds specifically, in 2014, this is the most recent data from Giving USA, and they're about to publish another one of these because of our new situation. But you'll see in billions of dollars how that microdata plays out. We didn't have that back in 2008, 2009, when we had what was even to date the worst economic downturn. So we've got a rainy day fund, if you will. The money's already been spent. So let's go have those conversations with those donors, and those of you that are in advising capacities, help people with their top 1, 2, or 3. It's extraordinarily important, and help guide those. It's not doing them any good sitting in accounts right now. So those total asset values based on trust accounts is very, very significant. And when those new numbers come out, we think they're going to be through the roof. So that education from 12 to 15, you see those numbers have changed a little bit. This is a huge opportunity, and I'll show you these slides from this special report, and all of this is on the Lilly School of Philanthropy site and Giving USA. The other opportunity that has never really been a great opportunity is the depreciated securities. So what that means is somebody gives to you gifts of stock. Most stocks in publicly traded companies are a little underwater right now. If somebody was considering making a major gift to you through depreciated assets, right now is the best time ever in the history of the world to give those away. And I invite you to check out the Carter website. My colleague Ted Sudol did an entire report of this. You can also find some information on Foundation Center and Candid on depreciated securities. Most people don't traditionally think of that because it's never been this good before, and it's really the last thing we would ever talk about in philanthropy, but it's the first thing that you need to talk about this particular year. It's a really, really unique and weird opportunity. And of course, the CARES Act tax benefits that you're seeing now, a little bit of a moving target, we recognize, but the CARES Act tax benefits are something that could be important to look at. Now, here are some resources that you can go to find out pretty current, fast information. The Association of Fundraising Professionals, AFP, is the national site, is really good. I know you have a chapter there. So talk to each other. CFRE.org has some information. Of course, your local community foundation, who better to talk to you about what donors are thinking and what trends they're seeing. LANO, the Louisiana Association of Nonprofit Organizations, the United Way, of course. Carter Global. Carter has a lot of things out there. Our team is, because we're stuck at home and not on airplanes, we've got a lot of time to write, so we're pushing out a lot of thought leadership, and we've got a lot of academics and some just really incredibly skilled people that are adding to that. Candid.org, that's probably new to you, but you've probably heard of the Foundation Center, and I know you've heard of GuideStar. Well, the Foundation Center and GuideStar got married, and in my opinion, they are the very best resource right this second of everything going on in COVID-related world. There are RFPs for grant opportunities. There are RFPs for partnership opportunities, and there's just an incredible amount of money out there of those foundations and major organizations that are coming together to solve specific problems. Go see if you qualify for some of those. The NEA is pushing out money, and you'll find all of that on Candid. Good 360, of course, the Center for Disaster Philanthropy, which was so powerful to your neck of the woods after major disasters. And then, of course, always a Chronicle of Philanthropy. They're incentivizing those of us in the thought leadership space to write as fast as we can, and a lot of us are. So I am going to unmute here. I know it was fast, I know it was furious, but I'm open to questions. I was not able to see the chat, so as I unmute this, I'm going to ask Sarah to help us with any of the questions that came through, and I just really appreciate it.
It was really easy. I think everybody was taking so many notes that they weren't typing and asking questions. I would like to kick it off with one question though. Part of it with those donor pyramids, and we
Yes.
talked about the different levels of engagement with different kinds of staff.
Mhm.
As I have shared with you, many of us on the Zoom today are in really small organizations.
Mhm.
A lot of people on here are the leader, the executive director and the development officer, or they might be the board member
That's
and
correct.
development. So could you talk a little bit about how a really small organization can use those donor pyramids?
Absolutely. Let me, I'm going to flip back. Can y'all still see what I'm
Yes.
showing you here? Okay. So the new donor pyramid, well, clearly in smaller organizations, we can't do all of these things, right? All of the time, but we're probably doing a whole lot of these things that we're not even thinking about. And we're not tracking them in ways. So, regardless of who's sitting in the seat, who's driving it. So, if you're in a holistically volunteer organization and just your executive director and maybe a data entry person, and then the people that are providing services, we see that a lot. But that doesn't mean that you're not necessarily pushing out social media messaging, you're not pushing out having face-to-face visits or doing donor tours or that sort of thing. What is most important on here is not necessarily who's doing it, but how are we capturing the information? So if you aren't a specialist in something, you can attend webinars like this and get more information. And frankly, AFP has quite a bit of information of just how to do particular segments of things. So what are best practices in annual funds? What are best practices in major gift fundraising? But the biggest piece of here is the prospect intelligence. How are we keeping track of people that engage with us? Do we know that Sarah attended this event? Not just how much money did Sarah give, do we know that she attended? Do we have some kind of tickler system, if you will, to prompt us to re-engage and make sure that we thank Sarah appropriately, we invite her to the next event, or if we're giving over time, how do we sort our lists in order to have face-to-face visits? It is the truth that you can run an entire campaign, if you will, off of a spreadsheet. I know this because I have a client doing it right now. You just have to track the information. So what that looks like is, what's the name? What's the cumulative giving of that particular donor? What are the number of gifts that they have given? These are things that most of us have access to. But how are we sorting that information? So sometimes we just sort it by the cumulative gifts, but we need to be real cognizant of how many gifts people are making and also what else are they attending. So in a spreadsheet, you can put an X. Did they come to an event? Did they send in an annual fund, or should they get an annual fund letter? Are we tracking that information? One size doesn't fit all. So social media is a great way to capture attention. It's a terrible way to receive information. So people will engage with us, but we can't necessarily capture that. But feeding that case for support routinely, it's that Nike example I gave, is the same message going out on social media. Are we having the same information on our websites? It's shocking to me, particularly in any size organization, that typically what is being said on social media, what is on their website, and what we're raising money for don't match at all. So are we pushing out consistent messaging across that? And really your case for support is a big piece of that. And that simplicity is important. Sorting your lists can decide, how do we go to face-to-face visits? And you can decide those thresholds. Anybody who gives us a gift over $250 is going to get a phone call. Anybody who gives a gift over $1,000 is going to get invited to this particular small mid-level event. You can do that and track that information. And when they show up, then gosh, this is somebody that maybe we need to go have coffee with. We need to be strategic about those things and really plan our schedules accordingly. So I challenge each of you to go pull your donor list of everybody who's given to you in the past 2 to 3 years. Go pull the cumulative giving and the number of gifts and then sort it. And then look at your top 25 and go through line by line and say, have I visited with this person? Have I communicated with them? And make yourself a plan of just having calls right now, Zoom calls with people to check in and share your case and ask how they're doing. If you will focus on that top 25 and then go to your next 25 and then your next 25 and then your next 25, and you do 25 calls a month, that's probably your entire annual fund. That's probably everybody that you need to talk to in order to meet your next 4 to 6 month goals. The other thing that I think we forget is who gave to us last year who hasn't given us this year. And if they haven't, have we actually reached out to them? Have we made that phone call? I actually took out a slide very frequently when people say, gosh, our annual fund is, in the hole. You're only looking at the dollar amounts. Are you looking at the people amounts? How many people make up the deficit of your annual fund? What did they give you last year? And can you ask those, let's say 40 people, just to recommit what they did last year? Or because we're in this interesting crisis, they say, gosh, I've really been thinking about you. Would you be willing to increase that gift? Or would you be willing to commit to doing that gift over 3 years? So next year, you don't feel like you're falling off the cliff. Now, the reality is this looks very complex. The donor pyramid, which incidentally was created by one of my colleagues 80 years ago, not kidding, it hasn't changed. The vehicles have changed. And I say this all the time, fundraising is not hard. It takes discipline to work the plan, to make the plan and work the plan. And we forget that the people are hard. If we have the plan and we do the work, generally the money will come. And we're in a unique situation that people are actually more available right now than they have been. They're more willing to take a 20-minute or 15-minute Zoom call face-to-face than probably they have ever been. So you can get in front of people that you have not been. So just literally pull out the spreadsheet and break this up. And if you are the executive, you start playing in the higher level cumulative giving. If you are the data entry person, you can make phone calls too. Most people, everybody's got somebody in their office that everybody knows and knows everything about everybody, not because they're nosy, but because they're that person. We used to call them 1,000 years ago, the Girl Friday, the person that when you hold an event, they call and they say, hey, what should I really wear? Or can I bring my daughter? It's never the executive director that they're calling. It's the executive director's assistant, or it's the development coordinator. Employ them. Employ your board members right now. I've got a organization right now that is just sent cards made by these are little note cards made by the people that live in residence with them. And they sent a pack of these cards to every single one of their board members with a list of 10 people. Would you reach out and tell them what we're doing? And here's the script. Now, if you receive a card that looks like this handwritten, are you really going to go check 5 other people to see if they got the same card with the same script? But you're going to say, wow, gosh, Kelly thought enough of me to write this note. Willie, gosh, I thought enough of me to write this note. That's a really big deal. And that's a way a board member can help you in a very, very significant way. Okay. I talked a
Thanks.
little bit in a circle, but I think those
That
are
was
important.
very on target for me. I think a lot of us. Another question about purchasing a database to do the tracking, especially for smaller organizations. How does that compare with doing an Excel spreadsheet?
I am a big fan of databases. I think it depends on the type of organization that you are. So I'm not willing to make recommendations of platforms that you should use. But what I would tell you is talk to your counterparts that are doing similar type of work. So if you're a performing arts center, you're going to need a database system that perhaps has ticketing and things like that. So your needs are going to be very, very different than a residential group home or than a school. And comparing those, what I do think is a lot of people will buy those databases and they won't actually use them. So if you're starting with the spreadsheet and you're using the spreadsheet and you're actually tracking your contact reports, which is a really big deal, then you probably need the database system. And are you tracking your volunteers? And the best thing to do is in your professional organizations, and you all have them. So if you're in the medical space, the medical group, what are you using? Talk to your counterparts, talk to your peers, talk to your competition. You know, we're really nice in the nonprofit space. When I went to work for the Forever LSU campaign, Kelly may even remember this. I sent 30 campaign directors across the country, including every SEC school, questions about, could you send me all of your collateral material for your campaigns and what you're doing? And could you share with me your campaign plan? And I got 17 or 18 back. And when I say packets of information, all of their things, we're really nice. We're not competitive. There's no such thing as competition in the fundraising space. Right? Philanthropy means love of humankind. So talk to your counterparts locally, nationally, ask them what they're using and how they're using it. I am more than happy to have some conversations with folks about types of platforms. When we talk about the online fundraising, I do have a favorite, and I'm shameless about sharing that favorite because they do such a great job, and I'll share some of that with you too. Does that help? There are some free ones out there that you can go into in the cloud. But just if you have just a general database, you know, what comes in your Microsoft file, if you will, if you know how to build it, you can use it.
Wow.
What other questions?
People's wheels must just really be turning a lot.
Any other questions? Is there anything that you thought you would hear that you didn't, and maybe I could answer for you? Oh, everybody loves the card idea. Isn't that the greatest? Okay. I'm not that great. Come on, you've got me for a good 20 more minutes. What do you can ask individualized questions. Don't be embarrassed. Anything specific to South Louisiana? Y'all wanna know how I know that Louisiana is the most philanthropic state in the United States? So the Chronicle of Philanthropy pushes a report out, and in 2015, it was the most recent, but it aggregates information by state, and you can drill down in it and look at parishes and community bands. So you don't have to be, I don't think you have to be into I don't think you have to be a member of Chronicle of Philanthropy to see that information, but it is readily available. Also, the Giving USA data, the Lilly Foundation publishes some things. You just have to know where to look. But I did my dissertation, incidentally, in 2015. And what we know about fundraising to be true 10 years ago, even, we turned on its ear. So everything that you think about philanthropy has changed. So it is absolutely true that old white men have held the wealth and the power for quite some time. However, the greatest transfer in wealth is happening right now from one generation to the other. In addition, the greatest entrepreneurial wealth across every demographic, so people of color, different ages, that sort of thing is happening, which is all happening at the same time. So some of the things that we hear really aren't necessarily true. They're myths and rumors now. So although maybe old white men were the biggest philanthropists, they are not the most philanthropic. Now, what does that mean? Historically, they may have made the largest gifts, but they don't give the most over time. And in South Louisiana, do you know the demographic that is the most philanthropic? It might shock you. I think Kelly Pepper knows the answer to this. If we look at the research, African American women who make less than $50,000 a year are the most philanthropic people in our state. They give 56% of their income away. So when you start looking at your list and thinking, oh gosh, this person doesn't have an interest, or maybe they don't have capacity, or they don't have wealth, or that sort of thing, that's where that prospect intelligence is really important. It is not about the money. How are they engaging with you? Our philanthropy is looking different. Now, ultra high net worth individuals and wealth, folks that have $100 million or more, those things haven't changed necessarily a lot. But what has happened is many more people have joined the ranks. And instead of having donor pyramids, we have what I call a donor sombrero. Fewer people are giving at the top, but they're giving much greater amounts. And lots of people are giving at the bottom. It's that middle that is missing. So what is the middle? It's different from every organization, but a lot of people are giving, $1,000 and less, a lot. And there's a number of people that instead of like this in a pyramid, they're like, straight up and down arrow, almost like an antenna, are giving extraordinarily large gifts, like $10 million or more. That middle is starting to miss. So we have to do a better job of cultivating and recording the behavior and cultivating the relationships to start moving people into their top 1, 2, or 3 philanthropic priorities. Another thing that is unique about South Louisiana that it doesn't happen in other places that we work is that a disproportionate number of people send their children to private schools. So our middle of the pyramid, our $5,000, $10,000 a year people are giving hypothetically, philanthropically, we just call it tuition at Catholic High or at, Rummel or that sort of thing. So although it's showing up in philanthropy, our working wealthy are folks that have an income of $1,000 to maybe $300,000 as a household. That if I live somewhere else in the country, like my brother in Houston, let's say he and his wife make about the same amount of money me and my husband do, and they get to go on all kinds of vacations, and they're a lot more philanthropic than my husband and I because we paid $56,000 in tuition to a private school. Now, is that philanthropic? Sure. Not really. It's expendable income. right? So the margins are different. So we have to work harder to be in somebody's top 1, 2, or 3 priorities, and behavior tracking is how we do that. And engagement.
I see a couple of other questions. One is about the online auction, and I know we're going to talk about that in the last session, but if you have anything there, and then another question on the volunteers in small organizations, how can you use them in fund development?
That's I'm going to attack the online auction. There are a number of platforms that are really, really good at online auctions, and in most cases they are worth the money, particularly if you're combining an online auction with something else. So for example, I'm going to do this online auction, but I'm going to empower individuals to raise money on my behalf. So I want Beverly to have a page, and I want Sarah to have a page, and I want Michelle to have a page, and Beverly's going to have $1,000 goal, and Sarah's going to have a $250 goal, or whatever the case may be. Different platforms do different things. My personal favorite is Mobile Cause, because they have a text to give back and forth option. You can communicate with them. They take the place of online giving for Facebook. So, and some of our crowdfunding. So they have a platform in which they are the back end bank for you. I think they're extraordinary, and they've been around a long time, and they do really good work. And you'll hear a little bit more about them. Qtego does really good work, and junior leagues across the country have used Qtego pretty well, especially in their auctions. They don't necessarily do what I would call the online shopping portion of that, which is a little bit marketplace different. But again, I would go talk to the people in your area that have a relationship with a specific vendor that has worked well, and get references, because you're going to need references. Sometimes the platform is fabulous, but the support is terrible. Sometimes the support is great and the platform is marginal. The two I just mentioned, you get both. You get support and you get a great platform, and they're relatively cost effective. The second question was, what was the second question, Sarah? I'm going to stop sharing so I can see, if that's okay. I can see the chats.
Utilizing volunteers from your board or the development committee in like doing tracking and thank yous and that kind of thing.
So I think one of the best things that you can do with board members, in addition to empowering them to assist you in the asking, so remember, board members, that you're in most cases, board members are taking fiscal and legal responsibility for the organizations which they serve. And when I say that, let me say that again. You're taking fiscal and legal responsibility for the organizations that you serve. And that means you are financially and legally responsible to make sure that they're successful, which means you need to ask the hard questions. It also means that you have to have the shared vision of the plan. So if you're not asking the hard questions right this minute, how are we reacting to COVID-19? What are we doing? You are a trusted and necessary advisor in a really difficult decision-making process. So this time is a great time to engage people in just the, what should our next thing be? Now, that is tedious and hard and all of those things. There are ways that I love to engage volunteers and board members. And the first thing to do is ask them. People will give to you in one of 5 ways. Write these down. You ready? They will give you their influence. What does that mean? That means maybe you have a public servant, and I see 1 or 2 on our call. Maybe you have a public servant who is willing to open a door for you, and they have great influence. And so they'll make a phone call and say, hey, Mark, this is Beverly. I work with XYZ organization. They're doing this. May I introduce you to the executive director? That's influence. They'll lead with their reputation. yes, you can put my name in your newsletter. You can share my story. We all know who those great big reputation, oh gosh, so and so's on your letterhead. So reputation is a big one. They will give you their resources. Resources look different. Sometimes resources is money. Right this second, resources is, do you have a conference room big enough to hold 5 people with 20 seats? Will they give you space? Will they give you the trailer that you need to haul the materials? Will they, what are their resources? One of the biggest gifts of one of my clients right this second is somebody's opening up their boardroom because their boardroom is so small they can't socially distance. So they said, we need to have in-person meetings because of the kind of work that they do, but they're going to do it at that space because they can do the temperature of everybody walking in the door, and they can socially distance the space, and they have the capabilities to do a call like that. That is an amazing resource that otherwise you would have to go pay for at a hotel or somewhere else. Okay, so influence, reputation, resources. They will give you their time. The most valuable thing I have to give is my time. So if somebody has limited time, then use it extraordinarily wisely. If somebody says, I don't have a lot of time, but I can do these other things, know that. So don't waste their time. If somebody says, I just retired and I have a lot of time on my hands, I am happy to come assist you, do whatever. What is their skill set? Ask them. What does that mean for you? And how is that most valuable? When I was the president at a woman's hospital, I had a woman who we, had docents and a big volunteer corps, but we were updating our database, and I needed somebody that I trusted. I need somebody with very serious experience, and I needed somebody that I could hold accountable based on a non-disclosure agreement. And one of our volunteers helped us transfer our database and do the data entry because she was a retired IT person at a very high level, and she would, if she's going to do something, she'd rather do it for our organization, and we trusted her. But we had to have that dialogue, and sometimes you have to be vulnerable and say, what does that look for like to you? Here are some projects that are on our back burner that we could use some help with, cybersecurity or whatever. They can stuff envelopes, they can make phone calls for you, they can do things like that. We're in unique times, so do you have some people that can help you help out in a safety perspective, right? We don't my husband is he works in oil and gas in a plant, and he knows a lot about safety. So I've been asking him a lot of questions about, how do we do some of these things upon entry. I hadn't thought about that. He's a biochemist. He's real valuable right now. He hadn't been so much in the nonprofit space for me before. So influence, reputation, resources, time, and then they'll give you their money. And we should be giving people opportunities to engage where they are comfortable, not where we are comfortable. It's not just meet people where they are. We have to meet people where we are and say, these are our needs, these are our necessities. Would you be willing to assist in some of these? And the best place to start is your board. When I was the president, I would bring note cards like this to every single board meeting. And while we sat there having our meeting, I would ask people to write thank you notes. And y'all, we're talking bank presidents. We're not talking, general volunteers. This is not specific to what your job is. That is somebody that just volunteers with you because they like the dogs and the cats that you take care of, and up to they're serving on a major board with you. People like to participate in the thank you. My favorite thing, I serve on a board at LSU, and my very favorite thing to do every year is I get a list of 20 people and I get to call them and I thank them for donating to the scholarship fund of my particular college. And they are astounded that somebody would call them. And now I think I'm calling people of $1,000 and above. I'm not 100% positive, but I just get to call and say, hi, this is Beverly Thompson. I'm calling on behalf of, I'm a board member and just wanted to say thank you. The only person that didn't like that is the guy who was watching the Saints game and said, you should know better than to call me during the Saints game. So I changed my time, but what a fun thing to do. It helped me establish some relationships with people that I hadn't talked to in a long time or didn't really know, and we were in school together, and now we have a communication. It's like, oh, absolutely. Why don't you call me when you're in Baton Rouge? We'll have dinner. That would be great. As a board member, I am now on their ask list. Does that help? I mean, it's just simple phone calls can lead to big things.
Thank you. We had another question about creating your elevator speech. I know
Yeah.
you talked about the case for support, so I think it's really translating that into the short time.
So that is your elevator speech. And it's not, oh, we need 50 scholarships, blah, blah, blah. It is the very high level of what you do, who you are and who you serve, and really what would happen if you didn't go. One of the things that you can do with your board members too is at every single board meeting, ask one person to tell why they serve on the board. And it gets them to talk about their personal story. Number one, you learn a lot about them. Number two, everybody else on the board hears something that they didn't know before. And you say, I need you to do that in 3 minutes or less. Why are you here? I am here because my mother had breast cancer, and I think making sure every woman in South Louisiana has access to mammograms is important, and I know this is the most valuable place I could spend my time, Women's Hospital. I'm here because I had a cat named Katrina, and I was devastated watching from across the world what was happening in South Louisiana, and I really was impressed with what you're doing with the animals. Not kidding, largest gift in LSU history. That was the conversation. So I think you have to remember, what is your vision, what is your mission, and then who. It goes back to the statement of, if you were to disappear, who wouldn't be served? The most important thing we do is ... and practice it with each other. I keep going back to Women's because from a brand perspective, Women's Hospital in Baton Rouge is one of the very best in the world at what they do. And on every wall, in every public space, is the mission and the vision of the hospital: to assist in the health and well-being of women and infants, period. That's the mission. To improve the health and well-being of women and infants. And I messed that up. But at any given moment, any executive in the hospital would say, Sarah, what is the mission? What is the mission? Why are you here? Who is your person? Why did you show up to work today? Why did you show up to volunteer today? Make it personal. That's your elevator speech. I know that sounds so simplistic. Y'all, fundraising is easy. People are hard. Get vulnerable, Brene Brown. Dare to be vulnerable. You're working in philanthropic spaces. People are giving here because literally a love of humankind. The word philanthropy, the definition of philanthropy, does not have the word money in it. The word philanthropy means love of humankind. Why are you here? What is important to you? Who do we serve? And what would happen if this organization didn't exist? Period. That's it. Don't make it harder than it is. I know it sounds really easy, but practice it with each other until it rolls off your tongue. You know what we were raising? I bet if I unmuted Kelly Pepper right this second, she could tell you what we were raising money for. Are you ready at LSU? What are your priorities at during the Forever LSU campaign? Student support, faculty support, campus infrastructure, and programs. And because we're at LSU athletics. You go to any major university in the country, and those are their 4 priorities, right? Oh, well, tell me more about student support. What does that donor just told me? That's where their interest is. Tell me more about the campus infrastructure. What does that mean? Oh, we're trying to raise $60 million for a world-class College of Business building. Oh, they will interact with you and ask you questions based on it, and you be ready for the next answer, and then you follow that rabbit. Does it make sense? Yeah? Okay. Don't make it harder than it is. You know what you raise money for. Your boards hopefully know what you raise money for. I serve on the board of the Boy Scouts. And the Boy Scouts is going through a really difficult time right now. So I really understand the definition of fiscal and legal responsibility and had to raise my hand on that. But right this second, the Estroma Area Council is raising money for some really, really cool stuff that young men and women get to go do in at Camp Avondale. And it's been so much fun to share those pictures on social media, to call my friends and say, you've got to see this climbing a wall. Wouldn't it have been great if our boys had had this? We need to, go whatever. And I've been scripted on that. But it doesn't sound scripted when I say, hey, Steve, remember when we were camping 15 years ago and we got ice in our hair? Now they have cabins. Wouldn't that be great? We got to go out there. You want to come with me? Let's go. Now, does that sound scripted? That's a script. Look at this picture. Script them. And guess what? That script matches the social media post, matches the website, matches the letter, matches the... And then you're, Coca-Cola. I should work for Coke, huh? What else? Y'all hung in there with me. You got me.
I don't see any more questions popping up.
Our next one is on major gifts. Here's a little teaser. Send me some questions that you might want covered in major gift fundraising. What's your biggest? Oh, I like the smiles. You're welcome. What are your questions regarding major gifts? My first question for you is, how do you define a major gift?
And we will be sending you all a survey that'll be really brief, but you will be able to give us some feedback of maybe your, top couple of takeaways that you're ready to put into action from today, as well as any questions you have for this or for the major gifts. So we'll do that in SurveyMonkey in the next couple of days.
Yeah. Well, I see quite a number of people on here that are board members for sure. And I just want to say, number one, thank you for your time and your reputation and your influence and resources and all the things that you do for these organizations. It matters. I see at least one public servant, so I want to give a shout out to Willie Mount, who's just an amazing hero of mine. And thank you for your public service. And all the rest of you, gosh, 4 to 6 on a Zoom call is a awfully long time, but I hope this is just a taste of what's to come. Our next couple of sessions are going to be really interactive, so it's not just me talking. We're gonna bring in some fun names and have some facilitated conversations. Hopefully rock stars, not just in your community, but in some others. So come with your questions. We're looking forward to it. Okay, that's all I got.
Awesome. Neely?
Thank you all for joining us. And I believe someone had a question earlier about when and where the recording of this will be available. So it will be available on the Junior League of Lake Charles website, jllc.net. And also, Sarah, I believe it's going to be up on your website as well.
Yes.
And we will send out a message to let y'all know when we have that up.
Yeah. I'm gonna stop recording here and right this second.